Okay, good morning, Chavre. Today is the 14th of Tammuz. We are on page 76, in the middle of chapter 4 in Geras HaTshuva, as we continue in our Tanya journey. In today's lesson, the neshama is a part of Hashem. Yesterday we talked about the mystical aspect of tshuva is Tashuv Hey, the final letter of the name of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, has fallen. We have to return it to its rightful place. That Hey is like our soul, as we'll explain. The Torah's metaphor of Hashem blowing the soul into one's nostrils versus speaking suggests that the neshama comes from deep within. Page 76, bottom. The key to this, what we discussed yesterday, Tashuv, returning that portion of Hashem back to its rightful place, is found in the phrase, for Hashem's people are part of God. The neshama belongs to Hashem. They're part of the four-letter name of Hashem, the Yud Kei Vav Kei. When describing Hashem's infusing of the neshama into the body, it's written, and he blew into his nostril the soul of life. Whoever learned Tanya with us from the beginning knows we already addressed this, but we're going to focus on this again today. He who blows does so from deep within him. When you take a deep breath and you blow, it comes from inside your body, right? Inside you, deep inside your lungs. Versus speaking, it's just coming out of your mouth. Obviously, you need air, you're breathing as you speak. But when you blow, take a deep breath, it comes from deep inside. So the metaphor of blowing signifies that the soul of a Jew originates from the inner aspect of godliness. And it comes from, as we're going to explain, the Yud Kei Vav Kei of the name of Hashem, the holy name of Hashem. Obviously, God doesn't have a body where he could take a breath and he has the lungs and it comes from inside. It's just an anthropomorphism. So how is it possible to say that God blew and to speak of God and speak of the hay as part of God? The Torah speaks in the language of man, so we could have a relationship to be able to understand what it is we're dealing with here. By way of an analogy, there exists a vast difference in the case of a man between breathing and speaking, as we said before. The breath that issues from speech, with his speech, embodies the soul power and life force only minimally. Obviously, at a certain point, you're going to run out of breath. I lost my voice because over Shabbos, we were singing a lot. We were singing, it's unbelievable. From Thursday night until after Shabbos, and even last night we had a farbrengen. So, sometimes you need to give your voice a chance to recover. But when you're blowing, it can only be for a short amount of time. The breath that issues from speech is only minimal life force, and that is only from the superficial aspect of the soul that dwells within a person. The breath that comes from a person when he blows forcefully comes from deep within him. It embodies the internal power and life force of the soul. And just as there exists a vast difference between speaking and forceful blowing, in case obviously we're only using it as an analogy. There's a huge difference between us breathing and blowing versus the Eibishter breathing and blowing, obviously, but we're just giving a somewhat of a reference point here. Obviously, there's going to be a big difference between the way Hashem created us through blowing into our nostrils the breath of life with the soul, and all the other creations, including the heavenly hosts and including the malachim. Again, everything was created something from nothing, but even the malachim, which are spiritual, do not get the same energy when they are created the way we do. Chayim v'kayam b'chinas chitzonius hachayis v'shafa shemashpia ein seif baruch hu la'achayos ba'olamos. They derive their life and existence from the external aspect of the life force, issuing forth from the infinite one. Just like we said, and we're going to say it in a moment, but I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, that Hashem spoke and the world came into being. So every single thing that exists, even spiritual things, malachim and spiritual worlds, just came from God's speech, so to speak. This other, everything else comes from the breath of Hashem's mouth, so to speak. You know, you always have to remember it's al derech mashal, by way of an analogy. By the breath of his mouth, all their hosts were created. So everything was created by the breath of Hashem's mouth. This is the creative power, which is embodied in the letters of Saram Amoris. Actually, we mentioned it in this week's Pirkei Avos, that Hashem created the world with the 10 utterances. These letters being in the nature of vessels and a drawing down and so forth of the life force, as we previously talked about earlier on in Tanya, part 2, chapter 11. So what's the difference with the way God spoke and brought everything to existence? Of a nishmas ha'adam, in contrast, the soul of man, the soul of man derives initially from the innermost dimension of the life force and flow issuing from Hashem. And he blew. The pasuk says that he blew. Of course, Hashem doesn't have a mouth; he doesn't blow. But again, it's just symbolizing that the soul came from deep within Hashem versus a more of an external or less of an effort when you speak. You just say the words and things come into existence. We can't do that, but Hashem did and does. So the soul comes from deep inside. It then descended through ever more concealing planes, also like angels who were created by means of letters that comprise the divine utterance, let us make man. Hashem spoke, came light. Let us make man. Man came into existence today, in order that the body could be in this world. So this is the difference between the souls and the angels, and even the bodies. Souls derive from the innermost aspect of godliness, and angels are rooted in the external part of godliness. So however holy and special angels are, remember that we come from the deeper part of Hashem, because they're so holy, they're so spiritual, that the pasuk, the Torah even calls the angels Elikim. As brought in the pasuk from Dvarim, that Hashem, your God, He is the God of the gods, Elikim. The last word here refers to the angels. And likewise, in Tehillim, it references the angels, by saying, praise the God of gods, Elikim, once again referring to the angels by the name Elikim. So you think the angels are higher, nevertheless, after I've explained that they are created by the breath of Hashem versus the soul which comes from deep within. Another pasuk says in Iyov, the sons of Hashem came to present themselves. So the name Elikim is applied to angels. Why? You would think that being called Elikim is an advantage. We'll soon see, because they derive their nurture from the external degree of godliness, which is merely the state of letters, words that were spoken. Similarly, the name Elikim is an external state relative to, now compared to, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the name of Havaya, Aval Nishmas Adam, the soul of man, Shebechinas Pnimius Achayis. That comes from the internal aspect of Hashem. He Chelek Shem Havaya Baruch Hu. The soul of a person is a portion of God Himself. not the attribute of God, Elikim, that creates the world, but actually the essence of God. The four-letter name of Hashem, Yud, Kei, Vav, Kei, indicates the innermost dimension of the life-giving power, which far transcends the state of letters. Okay. So the takeaway for today, the energy in blowing originates from the core of a person. Therefore, one cannot blow air for the same amount of time as one speaks. You ever see somebody get like the wind knocked out of him, you know? It's like you're immobilized for a short while. That's why when you're blowing the shofar, you can't continue doing it for so long, besides the lips and everything else. When you're taking a deep breath and you're blowing, you can get lightheaded. You can pass out. So this shows that the neshama is deeply rooted within, the breath of a person when he blows is rooted deeply within a person. Similarly, the soul of man is described metaphorically as being blown by God, and it suggests that it originates deeper within godliness than any other worldly creation which came from Hashem's speech, which gives us a tremendous advantage and a tremendous connection and a tremendous responsibility to return that hay back to where it belongs in the name of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. So that's what happens when we do tshuva, referencing yesterday's learning. Okay, Chavra, that's it for today. Tomorrow we continue chapter 4 in Igeres HaTshuva. All the best, guys. Have a wonderful day.